Meeting on October 21st. I will call the meeting to order and say that cell phones should be silent. Our meeting may require invoking formal board meeting rules such that visitor speaking and participation, I'm sorry, that was one on sentence. Our meeting may require invoking formal board meeting rules such that visitor speaking and participation will be limited to 3 minutes during agenda action items and visitor participation. All right, so moving along, roll call. Let's start with you, Teresa Seam.
Here.
Great. Molly Krychowiak.
Here.
Danielle Bailey.
Here.
And Tamika Vukovic is absent, and Andrew Franklin is here. Our first item on the agenda is approval of item D, E, and F, which are approval of the agenda, minutes, and approval of financials. Is there a motion with respect?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I do want to just entertain, if someone would entertain one clarification, which is the October 7th executive session minutes indicate that we had discussion to consider COVID-19 salary adjustments for custodian and 1.81 salary increases for staff. I would like the motion, I would like the minutes reflected just to state clearly that we did not take action on that, on anything at executive session at that time.
That is fine. I do believe it's written as a discussion item, not as an action item.
Okay. If no one else sees the need to clarify, I think though that we do have that set forth, that it was a discussion and no action was taken. Other than that, if there's no motion, then I'll ask since we have a motion and a second pending, I will do roll call vote. Molly Krychowiak.
Aye.
Yay. Okay. Teresa Seam.
Aye.
Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so the motion carries.
All right, good evening. We actually have two district goals to talk about. Our first one, and then Jenica Westfall is going to come talk about our parent and student survey and give some results out to the public. But I'm going to go first with the Health and Nursing Services report that was written by Lori Kindred, but she gave it to me to be able to read to you tonight. You all have this in your packet. First of all, kudos to Lori, who's been working double time for us, but has also helped out at the North Shore Health Department since COVID started. And I think that she and Ann, who came to our last meeting, have just done a super job of being able to communicate what's in our best interest as a district. So kudos to Lori. And then our health secretaries. So they were both outstanding, both who got promoted this year. And so it was Belle Holloway and Kayla Brzezinski that this report comes from. So first of all, she goes through and talks about chronic health concerns and that we are busy in our health rooms. We have over 60 cases of asthma, over 90 cases of food allergies, bee allergies, medication allergies, and she reports all on that. And then she gets into the immunization report, and I'm thrilled. Every year since I've been the superintendent, we've had 100% of our parents willing to either say that their kids are immunized or that they have a specific reason for them not to be immunized. The state has a 99% exclusion non-compliance, and we've always made that. So we had 0 students non-compliant by day 40 of last year. Direct services to students, Lori talks about that she sits in and helps our health aides on a daily basis. And again, what I think people would be stunned, but also pleased that we have full-time health aides and Lori Kindred as our nurse, because we had 783 visits. That's a monthly average between both buildings, 325 visits on a monthly average at Parkway, 458 here at Glen Hills. So obviously kids who are needing either just even as simple as a Band-Aid versus medications or whatever, they are free to get to the health room, and our health secretaries are very busy. They do medication. We do administer medication here with the approval of doctors and parents to the tune of over 470, 252 different medications on a monthly basis at Parkway, 220 here at Glen Hills. We also have EpiPens, and I want to give Lori special credit for this, and she talks about it in her goals at the end, but she was the one who was able to make sure that we have free EpiPens through the EpiPens for Schools program. She signed us up for that so that each building has an extra EpiPen in case something happens. But we have 17 different students within the district that need an EpiPen with them at all times. Lori also participates in IEP and 504 participation when needed. She was able to be at 11 health plans that she sat in on and also attended 13 different IEP meetings. The other thing that we do that isn't required by law is that we still do our screening, early identifications for potential problems. We screen for both hearing and for eyesight, and we will continue to do that. And then the last thing that Lori talks about is staff training, that we do in-service training to make sure that everybody understands individual needs of students in whichever grade level. So she will train the teacher that is specific to a student, but also our health secretaries and other secretaries in dealing with asthma and epilepsy in schools, how to use an EpiPen in service and administering medications to students. And then she's also been pushing, and we've been using more and more of our Infinite Campus system so that with the enter medications and health office visits so that every parent knows exactly if your child comes to the health room, the parents know that they are in the health room. And again, I think that's very appropriate if a child's in the health room for whatever reason, once or twice, but if a child's there 22 times over a month and a half, I think parents need to understand that something's going on there. So, so her recommendations that I concur with is that we continue to work closely with the North Shore Health Department with respect to immunization compliance, that we provide assistance with COVID-19 issues, which they've done a great job with, that we continue to train students who have health issues prior to the return to school. Again, working with students directly so that they are their own advocates for their health issues, that we still do vision screenings, that we continue to use the EpiPens for School program to receive free EpiPens at each building, that we continue to update our school website. One of our big goals is to communicate better with our families. We can do that through our website. And then to work with staff to utilize resources available in our Infinite Campus system. So she ends by, in the school environment, health and nursing services help support the role of administrators and teachers. By keeping students healthy, we can better help them to concentrate on their education. She actually thanks us for the opportunity to serve as your school nurse. And again, I want to return that because we should be thanking her. Her work has been outstanding since she walked into Glendale. So thank you, Lori. I can answer questions or some of them or get them answered if I can't through Lori. She just wasn't able to participate tonight. Any questions or comments?
Well, I guess I'll ask the first question, which is what has the COVID pandemic done that has impacted how we provide services? And I know that's kind of a broad question, but if there are any kind of bullet points or big issues that we've seen, I'd love to hear.
I think since we are virtual, I think what Lori has been able to help with is helping parents understand and where to get resources if necessary. I think she's been sitting in on IEPs and health, meetings. And we also do have, and Shannon's going to talk about this, we have, and this isn't at the same time, but about 135 students who are coming into the building on any given week. And so they're still making sure that their medication is up to order, their physical therapy, any type of therapy, she's working with those. So I think it's really a continuation of what her regular job is, in addition to making sure that we're maintaining health and safety protocols. She was part of our health committee that put the protocols in place to keep our schools as safe as possible.
this, in thinking ahead of, in thinking about when there are more children in the buildings, I think I recall a concern of hers may have been, or nursing in general, is like how we will handle kids or staff or with COVID symptoms, as opposed, because as you just mentioned, we have a lot of kids coming through the health office generally. So has that been, was that addressed in the health and safety, or will we have a separate sort of quarantining area? Do we have that already figured out?
Actually, we do. Through the recommendation of the Health and Safety Committee, both buildings have a quarantine room that is outside of the health office. So
Okay.
if a child or an adult is having symptoms, COVID symptoms, they would be put in the quarantine room until they are able to be picked up.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And we also have extra PPE for our health secretaries or any adult that might have to be with that child if that child would need specific intervention.
Okay.
Larry, I remember that in the beginning of the school year, actually over summer, if I recall, that the state had shipped a large number of masks and other PPE, some which was intended to be earmarked for students, in the event of reopening. I guess the question is, are we distributing any of that to students?
We are. If anybody needs a mask, we have over 4,000 on hand right now and are able to get more from the state anytime we ask. So we have plenty of PPE in our buildings right now.
That's good to hear.
Yep. In just about every room, if I look over to my right in my own office, I have a package of face masks sitting right on that table over there in case somebody comes and they don't have one, so that we can share them. And we've done that in both offices also.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comment? We can move on to, yeah, go ahead.
All right, the second goal that we always talk about is communication, and we did send out student and family surveys about how the beginning of the year has gone. And to give that report, I'm pleased to announce Jenica Westfall, our Director of Teaching and Learning. Jenica?
Good evening. I'm Jenica Westfall, Director of Teaching and Learning. Shannon, wondering if you could, or Karen, if I could share my screen for my presentation. Oh, there we go.
You're already a co-host. Go ahead.
Thank you. There we go. Put this here. Okay. All right. So tonight, I'm going to just be spending a brief amount of time sharing an overview of the Glendale-River Hills School District Virtual Learning Plus survey results for the student and then the caregiver survey. So between October 6th and October 19th, the Glendale-River Hills School District administered brief online surveys, one for families and then one also for students. We really wanted to get feedback related to the virtual plus learning model. The brief surveys were designed to gauge stakeholder perceptions and how the virtual plus model could be improved, and then next steps in planning and thinking about our transition back into schools during this continued COVID pandemic. So this presentation is going to be a summary of the overall results and some of the key findings and the actions the district is taking for students and for families. I don't know why. There we go. All right. So the response rates were 370 of our families were responded, and 430 students responded to the survey. Among students, though, we did have an underrepresentation of students that were in K4 through 3rd grade. We are thinking that because students needed some additional support taking the survey, that we believe that that is partial reason for that finding. We also have some limitations to think about as well. So while the survey average response rate for both families and students, we do have non-responders that may have unique needs that are not represented in this response group. So we need to keep that in mind. And then also, The data collected, we need to remember that it's a snapshot in time of stakeholder perceptions. And then in this rapidly changing world, our perceptions often change quickly. And then finally, the survey data is just one source of information that the district utilizes to inform decision making. Quick overview of the survey. So we really wanted to focus in on some key topic areas, specifically the learning model, student needs, student engagement, and relationships. So that's what we're going to be overviewing today. So overall, when looking at the families' responses for satisfaction for the current learning model, we had a large number of families that were extremely or quite satisfied. We did have 61%. 25% of our families were somewhat satisfied, along with slightly 8%, and then not at all 6%. So we ended up having a high amount of families that were very satisfied with
Jenica, quick question. Do you know the breakdown of the families? Is Parkway versus Glen Hills? Do you know if there was less Parkway families versus or more, or if it was about even? Do you know that?
We found that there was an even amount, but when you think of the data, there were so many more students. For the parent survey,
Yeah, for the family.
Couldn't disaggregate that for the parents, only for students. That question was asked. So yes.
Okay.
You'll be able to see on the other one, so for students. So no, we were not able, we didn't ask whether they were Parkway or Glen Hills on that question. All right, so for students, this was interesting. The majority of our students wanted to be learning at school. So we had 47, not the majority, but a large half of our students wanted to be learning at school. And then a large percentage would be happy with more of a blended type learning model. We also asked a question around allied arts. And this was a question in the student survey. 93% of our students found that the amount of allied arts time was favorable. And then for technology, I pulled some data for both the families and for students. So 76% of our families found technology to be slightly easy to easy. And then for students, 49% found the tech to be easy and 45% found it to be okay. So we really, how things change so quickly. I feel like if we would have done this at the beginning of the school, we'd have very different numbers. I think we're settling in with technology. We also wanted to check how students felt about their coursework and if they needed additional support. And based on the survey results, the majority of students are finding the coursework to be manageable, and the majority of students are getting the help that they need when looking at the data. So you can kind of see. So while the majority of students are able to manage their coursework and are getting the help they need, parents and caregivers are concerned about student academic growth. We had 80% of our families are concerned about academic growth. And then also a high percentage of parents and caregivers felt that they were confident in supporting student learning. So they're feeling really good about supporting student learning, but yet are concerned about the academic in a virtual format.
Well, Jenica, I'm sorry. Could you go back? Are you in the 92% that is extremely confident, somewhat confident, and quite confident versus not at all or slightly? Is that what you're using to get 92? Or
confident or on the other side of it? Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
And then the same on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, you can keep going.
I'm frozen here. There we go. Student engagement. The majority of our students feel they're able to try hard on their work. It's something that they're able to do, and then they're also able to stay focused on school. So if you look at the data here, and I'm combining a couple of these things, right? So 76.5% of the students are able to stay focused on their work. So I'm doing okay with focus, or it's really easy to stay focused. So I'm combining those two. For the 88.4% of students are able to try hard. We had 25.8% said it's easy to try really hard. And then 62.6% said it's okay to try real hard. There we go. And then we wanted to know a little bit more about relationships and just how students are feeling and connecting, not only with peers, but with teachers. We had 84% of our students felt that they had an adult to go to for help. I thought this was really powerful. And 90.8% of our students felt connected to adults at school. And what was interesting is the difference in parent perspectives. So 56% of families are confident with their child's relationships with adults at school right now. So we noticed that there was some discrepancy there that we wanted to dig into a little more. And then also caregivers' concerns around social emotional needs are high. We had 80.9% of caregivers are concerned about their students' social emotional. We also have a small percentage of students who feel connected with their peers at school.
Can I ask you a question about that? And maybe it's further in your presentation, but we all know and we all are concerned about the fact that students are not engaging with other students personally, in person rather. Certainly, they don't have the same activities and so on. What are the things that we are doing to try to bridge that divide and to create a community amongst students who are virtual right now? I mean, I know we talked about that in the past as kind of something that would be a goal, as we move forward in a virtual or even at the time a blended model. But, I do think that there is, if not harm, certainly impact from students just not being able to engage like they normally would. I mean, I think all of us have that same feeling in our work environment, just in society in general. So kids, of course, they're growing, they need that. That's something that this board has considered, to some extent, certainly when we decide to go virtual. What can we do more to help make students feel like they're part of a community?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Mr. Franklin. So we have quite a few things that we've been doing, but we also have quite a few things that we're rolling out as well. I'll just really quickly go over some of these key findings and then I'll jump into that if that's okay with you. Is that okay? So for key findings, the majority of families find the virtual plus current structure favorable, with the majority of students would like to be in person or in a blended type model. Technology overall is going well. Students definitely want more time interacting with peers, and then have that concern about social emotional growth, right? We can make that connection there. The majority of students are feeling they have adults to go to, but we still have that caregiver concern on the other side. So I just want to throw this quote out. I felt this was kind of important in the moment. Vulnerability is not knowing victory or defeat. It's understanding the necessity of both. It's engaging, it's being all in. And I just wanted to say to the school board and to the public that the district, the staff, the administrative team, we are all in for students and families, and we're doing everything in our power to make sure that students and families are taken care of during this time. So with that said, we are taking some actions as a district. I'm doing an overview here, but there are a lot of things happening at the building level. specific things that are going to be kind of rolled out and popped out on Facebook and different things that I don't necessarily have every single detail about all of them, but I'll talk to what I have here. So each school is, I'll just preface this. We met, I had a team of, or actually the administrators had a team of teachers and a group of people all looking at the student surveys, and we really wanted to dig into some of those questions about the peer interactions and problem solve some different ways that we could kind of attack that. So as a team, we did a notice and wonder activity, kind of went through the data, what were we noticing, then we also did some wonderings of what can we do about it. So we came up with some different ways that we can kind of meet the needs of students and then also empower students in the process of helping them come up with some plans of how they can also strategize and be a part of the planning process of having opportunities to meet and talk with peers, especially at the middle school. So how we're supporting tech right now is that we're meeting weekly as a district tech team. Our SEL team is checking in on students and families. They're also supporting relationship groups. So I know the guidance counselors are working with new students at each building. Our guidance counselor at MIA at the middle school has formed different groups for all the new students that have been coming in, and she's meeting with them. Over at Parkway, they're doing like a connection corner. So for each grade level, all the students can come and join this connection corner to have time to have chats and some talking time. There's also opportunities throughout the day. We were kind of digging into classroom teachers and stuff like that. How are we providing enough time for students to have some of that talking time just amongst peers that's not pre-planned? And then part of this is just letting the buildings do a little more work on disaggregating the data and really kind of going through some of those comments. There were a lot of comments, you know, as I'm sure with 300 people, 400 people on the surveys. I'm going through some of those comments and really looking at some of the suggestions from families and from students to help guide some of that. And then we also, the teachers are collaborating to ensure that clarity of learning to support that student growth. We're doing some data reviews at each of the buildings, again, to support that student growth. And then we're also starting to work on planning for the transition to the next learning phase. So there's a lot of things in the works for that peer interaction. I think it's going to be good for kids. So we'll have to do another survey to see, you know, check in on if we're successful or not. But I think a lot of students are advocating for more of that, you know, currently in their classrooms. That would be the results.
I have
Other
a-
questions? Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
some questions. So I'm thinking about a couple of things you said. So we had there's probably about 500 to 600 families who maybe, you know, parents, caregivers who didn't take the survey, and students as well. So what we're looking at is, you know, a small sampling like you mentioned. Are we doing anything, or are we thinking about either why folks weren't completing this, or how we get at some of that, you know, some more information, some more data to use? And I guess just the follow-up to that is, you said these surveys are one source of information that we're using to sort of inform our virtual learning structure and plans. What are the other sources?
Teachers are doing a lot of like internal surveys within their classroom to help guide just their classroom work. That's not, we don't look at it at the district level, but teachers are collaborating and having conversations among their teams, dipping in on kind of doing pulse checks on their students. We have the SEL team that's also doing a lot of work around check-ins with families and with students.
Okay.
And the building principals are having conversations with grade level teams and their leadership teams around some of these topics.
So mainly, so it sounds like the SEL team, principals checking in with staff, staff checking in with themselves and also their students.
Mhm.
Is that, okay. And there were staff surveys too. Is that going to be, will that be presented to the board or to any of our committees? Has that been reviewed yet?
I believe that's a committee. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larry. I
No,
believe.
it is. We wanted our staff to get the survey results before they went public.
Right.
So it will be coming to the curriculum committee first, and then we're having it at an open board meeting. But our principals wanted to make sure that our staff heard it first.
Right.
Okay.
Speaking of committees, you know, we have lots of surveys, and you know, I think a lot of people probably are tuning out because we're having so many, and I don't think that that's, you know, to say don't have surveys and just saying that, you know, people are kind of tired of clicking buttons on some of these things. We, as part of the reopening, had 3 distinct committees, and I guess I'm thinking about the social and emotional wellness committee, where we said, you know, at some point after the year got underway, we would go back and utilize their, you know, knowledge to try to address some of this. Are they being you know, called back into discussion at all, or are we going back to any of the committees that helped us, you know, pave the way with our, you know, priorities and concerns, and asking them you know, how things are going?
The social emotional committee worked hand in hand on creating some of these surveys, and they also worked with doing some of the analysis of the survey. In the background, they've been doing the parent nights. Shannon, you can jump in if you want to share more. But they started all the family nights. They've been driving the check-ins. So a lot of what's happening is actually being driven by the social emotional team. We wanted to kind of put the survey together with some of the learning models / social emotional, so there isn't just another survey coming out. I do believe the reason why we don't have a lot of responses from our younger students is because they needed to be supported by a parent to take it. So I think that, you know, just putting one more thing on a parent and family when they're, you know, working on schoolwork and doing, you know, additional things, it's harder to get those responses. I think we got a lot of responses from Glen Hills because it was given as an assignment for students. So the survey was just given to the kids to do as an assignment. So then I think our response rate was really high for Glen Hills, which was wonderful.
I talked to you, Jenica, too, about this, about the reopening committees. But my understanding is the SEL committee is not, these are not the like same members of the committee that were meeting in the lead up to determining how we reopened. So this is more administrative. This is teachers and staff now, the SEL team. This is not, these committees don't include community members anymore, right?
No, because we're meeting, you know, we're meeting mostly during the day.
You know, I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to say, you know, I think it's really important to have parental and community involvement. And we went to a lot of effort to get those communities set up and to tell people that we cared about what their input is. And I don't want to sound harsh, but I really feel that it's important that, you know, where we're making some of these decisions about the ways that we can reach out to students, that we directly involve the parents of the students that, you know, are seeing the ways in which their kids can be, you know, reached out to and benefit by that. So, you know, I guess my expectation was that the committees were the committees, and that the people who were going to be part of the committee were, you know, the community members, and that, you know, that was going to continue through. I'm a little upset to hear that, and I would just encourage you to go back to the people who were involved and to include them in some of these discussions.
I think that's good criticism, and I can have actually all 3 committees get reconvened with it between the now and the next board meeting. And just
Can I
give an update from
respond
each of them.
also?
Yep.
Larry, Jenica, can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh,
Mr. Franklin, just to follow up on the SEL committee, our group met obviously over the summer several times, and the action steps and the planning that we did, the group that was involved with the parents, the staff members, and then the core SEL, which is our counselors, social worker, Dr. Rodriguez, and Just Schaaf, we developed a 3-month plan. So we had August, September, and October priorities that we were tasked with. And that's the document that we're going through right now. And obviously we're in October right now, and we've been working and pretty much completing almost every suggestion from that initial committee. So once that work is completed, we definitely have the plan to re-engage the full committee for the next steps. But our goal was to have a solid plan in place for prior to school starting, the first month of school and into the second month of school. And I'm extremely proud of the group because we have done a lot of those things through that work.
You talk as if there's a plan to reopen the school. Is there, a time to reopen the school? Is there a planned reopening date that I don't know about?
Are you talking
You're talking about reopening the school and about 1, 2, 3. So I know we keep talking about planning, the reopening of the school. I just want to make sure I'm not missing out on something. Are you targeting a specific date for reopening?
Absolutely not. I would, if I said that, I misspoke. We were talking about plans that the SEL would implement in August, September, and October virtually. We planned everything to be virtual for that time because that's the model that we were given. So all of the activities such as the SEL parent professional development that we've been offering on Tuesday nights was a virtual plan. The connections with lunch bunches and the new student groups and all of the planning that we did through that CASTLE document, if you remember back, just was planning for implementing social emotional strategies for August, September, and October.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
You bet.
I just have a comment about one of the slides that I found to be quite promising was that so many, and I believe it was 92% of students had an adult that they could connect with at school. And I think that data point, and this isn't an affront to parents, but I think that's very genuine because they're the ones that are sitting on the screen all day. And I think they would be very honest about that if they didn't. And that makes my heart feel so good for our students who have that connection, that I know they want to be with peers more often, but that they at least have an adult connection, and at such a high percentage too, is remarkable for our staff, and that's kudos to our staff that percentage is so high.
I agree with you. Obviously, we want that to become 100%, but that's what we're working towards. But that's a very wonderful number to see at the start of a new school year in a pandemic. So,
Agreed.
Can I make one more comment on the surveys? So you probably received, if you're a parent in the district, parent or guardian, you would have received the transportation survey. That was the most recent one we sent out. And that one, we actually collected names and email addresses so we can actually track down each and every student and family in the district. In that survey, wanting 100%, we got 583 responses. So again, I think people are just getting survey overload, and this is the survey that's asking, like, if we do come back, do you need the bus? Would you be driving your child, or would you, so this is a pretty easy survey to answer, or would you be staying virtual? And again, we had 583 responses to that. So anyone that didn't respond to that one is going to get a phone call from an employee in the district to kind of get your answers so that we can chart those.
and that we were very specific to say that we aren't starting school right now. This was really for a right way to get the information that they need so that they can do routing so that we can continue and finish the bus contract. So it was very specific to say that it's if and when we come back, would you need it?
Correct. And we've been intentional of trying not to do survey overload. The social emotional committee talked about that right in our practice, that we are over surveying people and that we don't want to do that. But some of the information we need is important and timely. So I think that's why the low response rate anyway, Danielle.
I mean, I think the surveys initially were necessary, and this one I think is important information for us to do a temperature check. So, I, you know, we gotta do what we gotta do.
Before we go, I do want to just point out one thing, which is, I do see that there's a lot of effort to kind of translate into the virtual medium what a lot of people are trying to do to reach out and to have those discussions. And I want to single out for a moment Ms. Young, because she came in the middle of a pandemic, and I've been watching her video messages to parents in Thursday folder on a weekly basis when they've been up there. And frankly, it's wonderful to see someone and to feel that connection, especially someone who's new. And I think that there's been a lot of positive feedback, and frankly, I'm impressed, and I think it's a good thing. So I do like seeing a lot of that effort to reach out to people. And again, Ms. Young, again, I think you're doing a great job, and really making your presence known here.
All right. If there are no other questions, I would say we move on to new business.
Thanks, Jenica.
Thank you, Jenica. I should
Thank
have
you.
started with that.
Thank you, Jenica.
New business A is consideration of the 2020-2021 district budget adjustments and certified the tax levy. So as you know, creating a budget this year was difficult, and I want to give kudos out to Rosie Tays, because she really did create 3 distinct budgets. In the end, what happened with the October certification released by DPI last Thursday on October 15th, it's based on the 2019 to 2021 biennial budget remaining in effect. And that is exactly what the legislature has told us, that they're not making any changes to this year's budget, which is great. So our budget adjustments are based on the changes in a couple of things. We have newer open enrollment in and out. It isn't a guess anymore. We know exactly how many kids there are. We do qualify for a declining enrollment exemption allowed based on a third Friday pupil count. Our decline in enrollment, we had anticipated some decline in enrollment, because if you remember, last year's 8th grade class was our largest. We were anticipating more K4 kids coming in. We are pretty low in that in K4, but I think that is due 100% to the pandemic, and that as we move back into school next year, especially in K5, we're going to see a jump in the K5 numbers. But we do qualify for that exemption this year, which is wonderful for us. We also, let's see, she's talking about declining enrollment exemption. And then our per pupil categorical aid did go up by $179, which was in this year's governor's budget. We also experienced a slight reduction in the equalized value for the district. The overall value of Glendale went down under between 0 and -1%. So it's a slight reduction, but not much. And then we did have district expenditures. We had final changes to district expenditures, including the staffing changes that we've had. We've had borrowing costs. We purchased services, especially a lot of Chromebooks and iPads, and making sure that they're up and running and fixed. And then we had the Fund 27, which is our special education fund transfer. So overall, this budget adjustment reflects a 1.1 increase in general fund expenses and a 2.4 increase in revenue. The increase in revenue is due to the new referendum allowing for an additional $600,000 levy authority. So with all that, Rosie, you have all this in front of you. And again, kudos to Rosie. When you add up all of the revenue, it ends up being $18,480,718. Our expenditures should be $18,085,443, which is a nice fund balance to go into fund balance at the end of this year. Remember, this is the first year of the referendum. We want to make sure we put money into the fund balance, especially year 1 and 2, possibly a little bit in fund balance in year 3, at least break even, and then pull that money out in year 4 and year 5 of the referendum to make it easy for everybody. So the amended tax levy is necessary to support the 2020-21 budget of the Glendale-River Hills School District. The total levy is $13,801,796. The majority of that, $12,980,980 is in the general fund. The debt service fund, which is paying back debt that we have, are $256,000 plus. Community service fund of $564,755. So overall, what that means is the 2020-2021 tax levy is a 7.95% increase. The 0.2% decrease is in equalized property value results in an 8.1% increase in the tax levy. So basically, for every $1,000 your property is worth, you pay $6.95. Last year is $6.43. So it is an increase. The majority of that is because of the referenda being increased by 600,000. That's the vast majority of it. So I have two recommendations for you. I'll read them both, and then you can make a motion. I recommend that the board approve the 2020-2021 net expenditure budget of $18,085,443 as shown on page 1. And I also recommend that the board approve the 2020-2021 tax levy of $13,801,796 as shown above.
Is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved.
And by the way, just to clarify, is that a recommendation on both, a motion on both recommendations?
Yes, that's how I phrased it.
Okay.
I second the motion for approval of both recommendations.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I'd like to ask, because I just want to make sure that we go through a couple of questions I have about timing and so on and so forth. First off, with respect to the legislature not doing anything, not meeting, no changes, if they come back and they change something, what does that do to our budget later on?
In that hypothetical situation, if they would come back, let's say in December, and change the budget, we would just have to make adjustments to our budget internally. We'd have to find a way. They could, theoretically, they could add more money to the budget or reduce the budget for whatever reason, and then we just have to make adjustments on that. But they can't, because it's already been approved now, and after October 15th, we will receive $179 more per student. They can't undo that because it's too late to undo those type of things. They would have to probably go after categorical aid. And I don't see a legislature that would take special education money away from districts right now, especially during the past. So I really don't see that as a possibility. Both legislature leaders, both Representative Voss and Senator Fitzgerald, have come out and said that they will not be in session until January. That doesn't mean they can't change their mind, but they've been very clear that they are not going to touch this budget.
And I guess the other question I have then is that just generally then, if we do want to make adjustments, do we have a deadline to do that by?
These are the adjustments, so this will be our official budget. And
Okay.
so if we have to, if for whatever reason, let's say they decide to take, $100,000 out of categorical aid and we get $100,000 less in revenue, we'd either have to eat that and take it out of our fund balance or find a way to reduce expenditures by $100,000.
Okay. And this is very close, by the way, just to be clear, this is very close to what we had originally passed in
Yes.
August. Yeah. It's only off, I think, by a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, well, they didn't change the rules, so it makes it a lot easier.
Right. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is the authority to pass the budget has no impact on specific expenditures. So whatever it is that we pass as our budget today, it is still the purview of the board to approve specific expenditures such as salaries or increases or bonuses and so on, which we'd be doing at a later point. So just because something might be contemplated in the budget doesn't mean that it's approved per se.
Correct. So this budget does include a 1.81% across the board salary increase, which I think ends up at about $135,000 if you added everybody's up. But that it's been approved, but it hasn't been expended yet because the Teachers Association and the board and the administrators all have agreed that we're going to hold on to that until after the budget adjustment. So you would have to, as a board, you'd have to approve those expenditures, yes.
Right. So, yeah, which we would do at a later point.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that I wanted to stress. Is there any other comment? Okay. Well, I do want to compliment Rosie on all the hard budget work that been done. I've been peppering her with questions as of late on a variety of issues, and I know how hard she's been working to get things prepared. It's really a Herculean task, especially in this political environment, to be able to plan ahead on funding. So there's a lot of hard work that went into this, and for whatever it's worth, I do want to extend my gratitude. I think that these are very hard decisions and a lot of difficult choices that go into the final numbers here. So if no one else has anything, then I would take a vote on Molly's motion. I will do a roll call vote in order of how everyone appears on my screen, starting with Molly.
Aye.
And Danielle.
Aye.
And Teresa.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye, and the motion passes. Thank you.
All right, for new business B, I'm going to introduce Dr. Moser. I believe he's going to be talking about the approval for request of a superintendent search. Dr. Moser?
Thank you, Superintendent Smalley, President Franklin, members of the school board. I am pleased to present to you and discuss the preliminary or the request for proposal or the RFP or the RFQ to seek proposals for the superintendent search. Let me editorialize on a few items as we get into this. Number one, your timing is perfect for the board. From my experience and from the experience of the superintendent search consultants, you're beginning this process just at the right time, so that you're going to be ending it at a time when you're going to be in the forefront of picking the best superintendent. You'll be in the forefront of that process, and that is a very good idea. A reminder, the request for proposal is seeking proposals for a consulting firm to do the search for a new superintendent. This is not the advertising for a new superintendent. That's a different process. This is seeking vendors, firms who would actually conduct the search. I presently have a list of 7 firms that we would send it to. And I'm proposing that we would accept other firms, not just those 7. These are 7 that I'm aware of, that I have done some research on. I built the request for proposal based upon input from the Mapledale Indian Hill RFP, the Pulaski School District RFP. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards consulted with me on how to do this. The Washington School Boards Association was very kind to assist me in developing the RFP. And Superintendent Smalley was very helpful in sitting down and helping me draw this document up. I took the best from all those sources and put it into the Glendale School District RFP. And of course, the Glendale-River Hills School District is the best of all those different combinations. And I do believe we've taken the best and turned it into a model RFP. The RFP would any proposal would be due on November 9th. The school board would select the firm by December 11th, and the school board would meet with the selected firm by the end of the year on December 31st and start laying out their plan for a selection of a superintendent by mid-March. It is it's an aggressive timeline, but it is also one that is felt to be very doable and very reasonable, and puts you in the forefront of the process. I put as part of the scope of work and what I consider to be a very important part of the search, and there is a emphasis upon transparency and participation by the school board and the community, by the staff. A word that I've come to enjoy that the school board, the Glendale School Board uses, is ownership. It gives ownership to the broad Glendale-River Hills community in the selection of a new superintendent, which always helps in the path of success of a superintendent. So I am asking permission from the school board as an action item to send out the RFP tomorrow. Will be put on the website. The specifics of the search would be shared with the staff and the faculty, and we would begin that search with the RFP. And the first step again is November 8th, when proposals are due. I anticipate you could receive proposals from 6 firms, and then you'll have to decide whether you want to interview all 6 or you'll interview a smaller number, and how you'll do the interviews. And that becomes part of the selection of the firm. And then once you pick the firm, then the relationship is between you and the firm on the superintendent search, what you're looking for, how the firm goes about their business on behalf of the school board. So President Franklin, I'm recommending and asking permission to disseminate the request for proposal as early as tomorrow.
Okay, is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved.
Is second?
Second, Teresa or Molly.
Teresa can take it.
Okay, discussion. Does anyone want to ask any questions?
I had a question, quick question, Elliot.
Yes.
Are you publishing this somewhere such that you feel like more than 6 or 7 firms might respond? I thought I heard you say that.
I did
you're
say
sending
that. What I said, I did say that. I said that there's nothing prohibits more than 6 or 7 applying. It will be disseminated as broadly as I can disseminate it. On our website, I will approach the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators, and attempt to interest as many firms as possible. The 6 or 7 firms that the board sees as the firms that will receive it, the RFP, are the firms that usually do business in Wisconsin on superintendent searches. These are the firms that, whether it was Mapledale sent it out to, or Pulaski sent it out to, or the WASB indicate, and WASB will be one of the, I'm sure they'll be putting a bid in. These are the firms, the vendors that usually work with school districts in the state of Wisconsin.
Thanks.
Dr. Moser, let me ask you a couple of quick questions here, and just so that we can discuss, I guess, the mechanics of what the selection process looks like. So I'll try to be brief. One is the selection process itself. once we get this pile of responses to the RFP, the board's going to be able to determine what factors and what process it wants to engage in order to select that final vendor, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That'll be your decision, whether it's money, whether it is vetting the firms, find out how well the firms have done. The criteria would be set by the board and determined by the board. This is a cliche that superintendents use all the time, speaking as a superintendent. This may be the most important process that the school board will engage in, period.
Okay, it is, and I appreciate it, and I also appreciate your hard work. I also, just to comment on the breadth and the detail of the RFP, I thought it was, it was more than sufficient. I thought it was very clear. But working as I do within the RFP world, I know that there are people who inevitably have questions, and so I guess just to anticipate, can we as a board leave the answering of questions up to you unless you need us? I mean, when people come back with questions about an RFP, what is the process by which those questions get answered if they're very specific?
Thank you for that. In the RFP, there is a reference to contacting me. You're right, President Franklin, that they would contact me. They will know that I am not the decision maker, but if they want to know information about the district, about timeline, about are there any limits, has the board said they will not spend more than $2,000? I'm exaggerating when I say that, but I didn't want to go to a high figure. I want to go to a low figure. They bring all those questions to me. And then I will let you know that the firms have contacted me.
Yeah. And then, I mean, because I guess my question is, if there are questions that you can't answer, how do we answer them as a board? Do we have to have a special meeting, or do we just, time?
Well, I could be facetious and say, if I don't have an answer, I'll make it up. Saying that, but I'll find out answers. I'll get answers. And I don't know at this particular point, as part of the RFP process, I usually boards do not meet to answer questions from possible vendors. That's the contact person, being me in this case. I would answer those questions.
Let me ask you one other question, and that is, it's too early to know what this is going to cost the district, because that's why we're getting the proposals. But in your experience, are most vendor proposals from search firms, are they done on a flat fee or fixed fee basis? Are they hourly? Do you know?
There's usually a flat fee plus expenses.
Okay. Okay.
The search will cost a certain amount of money. You may say that with the search, you want to send 2 board members to Hawaii to visit the home district of your top choice, and so they would say it'll be the cost of the search. And
just one, but okay.
One will go. One will go. Yeah.
Actually, I take that.
Fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anyone else? No. Okay, I appreciate all of that. Then I guess I would ask for a vote on the motion to approve the request for proposal and to disseminate it accordingly, starting with Molly Krychowiak, aye. And Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
Teresa Seam.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye. The motion carries. Thank you really for this hard work as we embark on this next stage in our journey as a district. Thank you very much, Dr. Moser.
Thank you.
All right. Our last item of new business is to accept a couple of donations. By policy, the board has to accept donations of $500 or more. Even though this is an anonymous donation of $1,000 to the Glen Hills Library, you need to approve that we can accept that $1,000, and you'd be silly not to. And then we also had, I want to personally thank Mr. Sams, who's been a long-term substitute teacher in our district, has donated $500 that he's requested to be put into the PTO Family Needs Program, but because it's $500, you need to approve that. So I'm requesting that you approve the donation of $500 from Mr. Sams and approve the $1,000 donation from Anonymous.
Okay, is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Then Molly Krychowiak? Oh, well, actually, I should ask, is there any discussion?
I mean, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sams and Mr. Mrs. Anonymous. Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. Then I will do a roll call vote. Molly Krychowiak
Aye.
and Danielle Bailey,
Aye.
Teresa Seam,
Aye.
and Andrew Franklin votes aye. The motion carries. Thank you. We rely on the generous support of our community, especially in these difficult times, and it's very much appreciated.
Wonderful. So we do have, if I look down at participants on my Zoom call, we have 58 people participating. And I think most of them are here to actually listen to the next report, which is the reopening updates and data reports from the North Shore Health Department. So Dr. Kelton will be taking that. Shannon, you're up.
All right. Before I start, Mr. Franklin, I just wanted to let you know your comments regarding Miss Young. She, obviously we don't have a chat available, but she wanted to personally thank you for your kind words. We are lucky to have her on board. So
Absolutely.
Thank you from Anna.
Thank you.
You bet. So I'll share the screen. I know, I'm sure everyone's enjoying this as much as I am, that this is my new job. So I've been getting in the habit of just using the same template to make it simple for everyone. Again, here we are, reopening schools report. I'm going to probably start going a little quicker through some of our guidelines, since this is repetitive twice a month now, but these are the 4 metrics that are used to determine school reopening plans and which learning model we should be using as a district. The data that's being presented tonight is directly from the North Shore Health Department's October 16th report. The North Shore Health Department does give us daily briefings, but they give school detailed reports each Friday as mentioned. So this is from Friday, October 16th. Unfortunately, we are still being listed as the burden level in the critical stage, which is the same spot we were last time. Again, the critical meaning is not, well, is not good. Again, this is the plot showing the same data for critical for the burden rate in Glendale. Again, this is the cases. We had 27 new cases this past week. The chart here shows a 2-week marker, but we had 27 cases in the last week. Our positivity rate again is 13.2, and we're looking for that to be under 5% for an ideal spot to allow more students to be in school. So we are still doing okay with the hospital beds and the hospital usage in the Milwaukee County, so that continues to stay consistent. And then here's the age distribution. And again, for those that are, if I'm going too fast, this presentation will be on the website again, of new cases per age group. So again, if you look at this, this is the cases reported on 10/15 in these various ages. These are the cases that were reported on 10/2, showing the new cases over here. This is the same chart that I've shown over the course of the last several months. We are in the critical stage in the purple. We started this whole journey in the red zone and have consistently the last 2 weeks gone into the purple. And again, this is the additional criteria that we've talked about numerous meetings in a row. This is a summary chart that I put together just to kind of chart so that you can have a easy look over week by week. So we had a lucky week here, but it's continuing to go in the wrong direction for the city of Glendale. So I have a few new updates for the board and the community tonight. As I mentioned, the North Shore Health Department sends out daily briefings, which give us daily information, and then weekly for the schools. There was one piece of information that was shared that directly impacts our reopening handbook and impacts a change that would need to occur in the handbook. And I'm going to share what that is. So one of the criteria that we use when we determine whether students or staff need to quarantine is based on the term close contact. And if you are watching the news as much as I am, you've probably heard people talk about close contact. Our handbook had close contact written in as being 6 feet from someone for longer than 15 minutes in a total day. And we didn't include some of these other more specific things. So this is a graphic from the North Shore Health Department, how they are defining close contact. So I would like to recommend that the board approve us updating our handbook language to reflect the safety protocols that the North Shore Health Department is using, which would basically, the next document was directly from our reopening handbook. This is a sample page from the reopening handbook. It says here, if you test positive, and this is geared for staff, and then there's another one for students, but if a staff member tests positive for COVID-19, this is what happens. This is the number of calendar days that they need to be teaching virtually from home. If someone in your household tests positive, this is what happens, and you need to quarantine or stay home for 24 days. The bottom bullets here are the items that are new information from this exact graphic, showing basically that if someone you personally have been in close contact with tests positive, and then it defines exactly what close contact means. A lot of people will give us scenarios, and this chart here makes it pretty easy to follow of what the criteria is and what the staff member or student would end up having to do.
And I just want to jump in that this is new information that came out just within the last week from the Wisconsin Health Department that the North Shore Health Department took. This wasn't, we were using the most up-to-date, and this is now the newest, most up-to-date close contact. So it wasn't like we were just ignoring stuff before. Just to be clear.
Yes. I feel a little bit odd that I get excited every Friday to get the health department reports and the daily briefings that I, printed off and I searched for right away, because I'm intrigued on making sure that we are doing what's safe and healthy for our students and our staff, and to make sure that I'm up to date on all of the details for us to be safe for our students and staff. So just a quick summary of what's going on in Glendale. We talk a lot about the city of Glendale data, but we now have about 150 employees that have been working inside the buildings, most of them working inside the buildings since the end of August. And as Larry mentioned earlier, we have about 135 students coming inside the buildings for in-person services. And those 135 are not in school all at the same time. They are staggered throughout the days in chunks of time throughout the buildings at both schools. So you're wondering, how are we doing with our data? Again, staff returned in person on Monday, August 24th. Students came back starting Tuesday, September 8th. 135 of them have. We have 2 incidents that I'm going to share and chart through a little bit to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on. So here's a sample of an incident that took place at Parkway. So I'm going to start on the left here. A parent of a student receiving in-person services tested positive. That parent notified the school, and immediately, in the abundance of caution, staff members working with the student in question here immediately started working from home while we awaited the student results. The student was then tested, and that student unfortunately came back with a positive test. So immediately that classroom was closed. Students that were in that classroom were quarantined for 10, the student in question was quarantined for 10 days, and 6 staff members were quarantined for 14 days because they were deemed to be in close contact. So if you go back to the other slide, close contact again, for students, the 6 staff members were actually hands-on working with this student that had tested positive. So what happens then, and what happened in this situation, is we go to the next slide, all 6 of those staff members took the COVID-19 test. All staff members came back with negative results. So after the 14-day quarantine, the classroom was able to reopen. All staff members during that time did provide virtual services from home during the quarantine. So even though we knew their tests were negative prior to the end of the 14-day quarantine, the guidelines from the health department say they need to quarantine for 14 days and continue to be symptom-free regardless of the negative test. So we follow those guidelines, and that classroom is now reopened. Glen Hill's incident, we had a staff member that developed symptoms and took the COVID test over a weekend. That staff member tested positive. That staff member will now teach from home for up to 10 days. This current employee that we're speaking of here has had no contact with in-person students. So this person is not working with students that are in the building. But 2 staff members were deemed in close contact to this positive staff member, and they were asked to quarantine for 14 days from the date of exposure, just using the guidelines. So the situation continues. One of those close contact in the previous slide has now tested positive or had symptoms and tested positive. So that person now stays home for 10 days. This employee also has had no in-person contact with students, but again has had 2 additional staff members that are deemed in close contact and are now quarantined for 14 days from exposure. So it's you know, it's pretty much like a connection, and that's why they call it contact tracing. We go through and figure out who's been in close contact, who needs to quarantine. And then Larry talked earlier about Lori Kindred and her role. Lori Kindred and I are emailing all the time on weekends, anytime something happens, so that she is in direct contact with the North Shore Health Department, and then we're making sure that we are following all the correct guidelines. So, yes,
Sorry.
Go for it.
Okay. If this throws you off track, I can ask it later, but I'm just thinking about the close contact criteria, and my assumption is for the staff interacting that the close contact is probably related to the being within 6 feet of somebody for more than 15 minutes, or I don't know if you have those kinds of details. So I guess I'm wondering if it's sort of why that's happening, or are we like
So
so is it not possible to keep the 6 feet amongst staff, to keep more than 6 feet amongst staff under certain situations, or why, or is it one of these other interactions, or I guess so I'm just trying to understand that.
It's definitely the situation that we're speaking of here when it's staff to staff. Yeah, it's not one of the other things.
Okay.
I guess somebody could cough or sneeze on someone accidentally. We are all paying attention to our masks and our mask mandates.
Right.
But there are times where there are in-person meetings that are held, or people work together in classroom spaces. But yes, that is definitely something that we should continue focusing on and keeping 6 feet apart.
I just want to interject here because, I think that this is a really important point, and I've been giving this a lot of thought. I mean, unfortunately, this happened, but if we're talking about, staff member to staff member contact and it's happening in a meeting, then we need to do what we can to reduce or eliminate whatever the in-person meetings are to what is necessary. One of the things that I understood when, and I'm not angry, I'm just, upset, is that we expected that teachers were going to have their own space, the staff was going to have their own space, and if we're having in-person meetings on things that are frankly not high priorities, I'm deeply concerned that we should be cutting off or reducing any kind of contact or prolonged contact when it just isn't necessary. And now I don't know where that line is, and I don't know how that's going to look, but it sure seemed to me that if we're going to have a couple of people together, that it ought to be for a really important reason. And also, to the extent that there may be people, I was thinking about this in the context of, Elliot and you, if one or the other gets sick from being in a meeting, and you're both in the same meeting, then, you're both potentially down for the count. And then, that creates, a resource problem. So I don't know if we ought to have a protocol, for example, for having, someone and their immediate supervisor not in a meeting together. Have you given any thought to how we can do that to reduce these in-person meetings?
I actually will jump in first. I think this is an excellent example of, we have the protocols in place. And I will tell you how the first incident happened in an office where there was social distancing beyond 6 feet with masks, and there was still a spread. So I don't understand how it happened, but it did. We have gone out of our way to make sure that administrative team meetings, meetings between administrators and teachers, as much as possible, staff meetings are all through Zoom. If it is an in-person meeting, it's in a large area where there's plenty of distance between people. But I do think that humans are human, and not everybody follows every rule every single time. And there's no blame, no shame here. But I do think that this is a good example that we can use to remind people that these protocols are in place for a reason. And when you follow these protocols, you're pretty safe here. So if teachers do have their own individual space, and as long as they stay in their own individual space, there's really very little risk to them getting sick. But if teachers choose to go talk to their neighbor, then that could become a problem. And I don't know, Shannon, if you want to add to that.
I was going to add that let me think here where I am on the slide. The interesting thing, and this, I think, if you listen to the news, they're always saying, don't relax on our protocols. And I do think that people are being very diligent in the school district, being there every single day, watching everyone walk in masks. I walked in this morning and our night custodians were spraying doorknobs, and people are still following the protocols. The interesting thing for me is these 6 staff members here, the child in this classroom here is a child that's not able to wear a mask. And these 6 staff members all wore masks, were in physical hands-on contact with a student that needed that level of support, and they still tested negative. So some of that is just that we really don't understand exactly how the virus works. And then this incident here, one of the 2 staff members here that did test positive later, we went back and actually measured the space where the meeting occurred, and it was 7 feet. And I think that's what you're mentioning, Larry, is that it's, people are, we're social beings, and people need resources from one another, and walk into a space with another staff member. And this was, obviously undesirable result of that. I don't know if you had further on that, Andy?
Well, no, and I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, this is a tough situation. And we have the protocols in place. We've aligned ourselves very closely with North Shore Health Department, but I don't want anyone getting sick either. And obviously that's, a concern that I have. So I guess all I would ask is, if there are things that we might be able to do better to prioritize, or to consider, who should be in a room, that we look at that too. To the extent that people are in the building, that doesn't mean that they necessarily always have to be, in the same room with someone either. So that's where I'm going with this, just to make sure that we're constantly looking at and seeing where something might have zigged when it should have zagged, and to try to improve that. I guess my other question is, obviously, the student was unable to wear a mask and that contributed to it. There's a human element that applies that shows that you can't always do things perfectly. I guess one question that I had as a follow-up is, the teachers were able to provide services virtually for 6 days. And I don't want you to comment on particulars, but, when students have services that they're getting, were there people also providing services in person during that time, during that 2 weeks?
Not
As
those,
the Parkway student?
not those 6 staff members were not allowed to come back into the building due to the quarantine. So
But
other
there are others, yeah.
other staff members that were not involved in this situation were in the building yet, but that whole classroom and anyone that worked in there and any student that worked in that classroom was closed. They all had to do virtual. And let's just, I'd like to just remind everyone about the reason that we have our students in special education coming in for in-person services is because the therapies and the direct servicing that they need simply ineffective in a virtual environment. So I imagine that those 6 staff members, yes, they did their due diligence to provide services, but again, it's not going to be to the level of what's needed for many of our children in special education. The other thing that I would also add using this slide here is we have 3 staff members. This is the other data that I've been collecting. 3 staff members in the district have had household members test positive. And according to those guidelines from that chart, because they have a household member that tests positive, they are automatically quarantined for 24 days. So we've had 3 of those situations since the beginning of the year. And then this category on the right here is truly just us being more cautious to make sure that we're not spreading the virus unnecessarily. So a household member that's in close contact of a positive case or a potential positive case where, let's say, for example, a teacher has a child in a different district that has been quarantined from their school because they are a potential close contact. We've been having those staff members stay home, or if it's a spouse or whatever, stay home until that household member is cleared so that we're not having to quarantine more of our staff and students. So we've had 9 of those situations, and just to be cautious, those employees have stayed home until the household member is cleared.
Shannon, are we doing like daily symptom checks with staff or asking staff to report, like the way when you go into a hospital, right? And you have to, I know we're not taking temperatures. Are we doing that, or was that more of just a one-off where we told people not to come in if you're having symptoms or if you've been exposed, or are we doing anything beyond that?
Yep, the guidelines we received on that is that we do not do the checks. The staff is supposed to self-check and self-monitor. If they report to their building administrators that they have symptoms, the administrators have the autonomy to just say to them immediately, stay home until you get tested or until you feel better if you don't have symptoms of COVID. So those situations people have self-monitored, and luckily most often they've come back negative. So.
Okay. And just, sorry, quick question. The staff survey, I wasn't privy to what was in that, but were there questions in that survey to the staff about how safe they're feeling in the building?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
And one of the questions was specifically related to, do they feel that we are taking the necessary protocols, or are we taking enough safety measures, too many safety measures, or not enough? And I can't cite off the top of my head, but people mostly felt that we were doing the right amount of safety protocols to keep students and staff safe.
Okay.
And one quick question: what is Lori Kindred's role when it comes to people reporting symptoms and whatnot? I mean, is she the go-to person for staff members as well, or is she really focused only on students in this scenario? Or have we asked her to take on a bigger role in the pandemic? since there's not as many students.
Right. She is, I kind of utilized Lori as the go-to between being the healthcare expert and the North Shore Health Department people, and me being more of the like collector of the data and then letting her know, and then she follows up. She's in touch with the North Shore Health Department people on a regular basis, where I am not. I just follow their guidelines and their protocols and read their briefings. But Lori is hands-on with the people at North Shore Health Department. But she does work, I mean, we have more staff in, working than we do students right now. So therefore, she has been more actively involved in staff situations than students at this point.
Okay.
Again, this is the end of my usual, what does this mean? Obviously the recommendation, there's really not a discussion of what there could be done here unless the board has some other feeling about it, but the recommendation from the district would be that we stay put in phase 2. Again, this is from October 16th, questions, discussion, which I think we've done along the way. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
I look,
Shannon,
I'm
I
sorry.
look forward to a day where I'm talking about different things
Something.
other than this, so.
mhm.
Same. I have a question for Larry, I think, of just sort of on this topic, if that's all right.
Yep.
I'm wondering if you are still meeting regularly, if the superintendents are still meeting as regularly as they are. And I'm wondering if our districts are sharing, so Shannon, you're tracking this data. Are districts sharing this data with each other so that we can understand what this looks like in other districts that are doing different things?
We still meet twice a week. It's the Zalke and the Milwaukee North Shore superintendents, basically from Port Washington down to Shorewood. We do share how many cases that we've had. Now, I will tell you that other communities and other school boards do not follow the same protocols that we follow. Some do. Many have chosen to be hybrid or in person with their
Right.
numbers even at critical levels, and they will cite other, if when Shannon went through the cases by age, you could see that there's been 13 cases that would have affected Glendale-River Hills students, ages 4 through 13. And some districts and some superintendents are using that data as a way to justify in-person instruction. We choose to actually listen to the North Shore Health Department and follow their protocol. So, but yes, we continue to meet twice a week.
But so they are sharing whether they're having COVID cases with you. So we have access to that data, or
I'd have
is
to
it
go
more like?
through- yeah, I'd have to go through the notes. I know we talk about it probably once every 2 weeks. The last time it was probably just over a week ago. And just because I know Todd Bugnacki well, he's a good friend of mine who's the superintendent of Cedarburg. I'll pick on Cedarburg. That they are an in-person district, but they have had to shut down 2 different classrooms in their elementary school due to COVID, and that they've had 7 COVID cases throughout the district. So, and then each superintendent kind of goes through their own experience. So,
Okay.
Danielle, also, when the North Shore Health Department sends the school reports every Friday, they send the school district reports from all of us. So when I get the reports, I look at Shorewoods, Whitefish Bays, Nicolet's. I look at all the school district reports and just kind of compare them all. So I have access to all of those individual district reports each Friday.
so
Okay.
with the exception that Bayside, Mapledale, Indian Hill, and Fox Point Bayside have chosen not to ask for school reports. Just saying. They're using ours and Nicolet's as.
Okay. I'd like to check that data out sometime, Shannon.
Yeah,
Or-
I can forward you any of them.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So a couple other discussion items. One, I'm going to go about educator effectiveness, a DPI waiver that we will be talking about later on in the year. And then Elliot will talk about the committee meeting schedule. And then I want to give a foundation update and a shout out. before we go to visitor participation. The educator effectiveness DPI waiver, we've talked about, we waived educator effectiveness last year when the pandemic started. We've been having discussions both internally with the administrative team and talked with teachers here. We've talked to other districts, Nicolay, Mapledale, Indian Hill, Fox Point, Bayside, Mequon, Whitefish Bay, John Thompson, Shorewood. I do believe that we will be coming to the board, and we have to have a public hearing about that to ask for a waiver from educator effectiveness. And I just wanted to point out, by waiving educator effectiveness does not waive an evaluation that's going on between teachers and administrators. That communication will continue on. Just the specific educator effectiveness, that process is pretty cumbersome, and it's time consuming for teachers, as Molly nods her head. And we believe that it's one less thing that we need to do. We will continue to make sure that our teachers are, great as they always are. And if someone needs help, we'll provide the help. But I do believe, after discussion with the administrative team and the Teachers Association, that we will eventually come to you to get a waiver from the education educator effectiveness. Easy for me to say, just because we believe it'll be the best thing for our staff. With that,
I have a quick question. So if Larry, if someone is in their summary year, does that person stall in the summary year until
yes.
until you go with EE again? Is that what the
Correct.
plan
That was
is?
one of my
Okay.
concerns, is that if you waive it, it would become like a doubler for the administrator the next year. It puts everything on hold until
Right.
the next year. So if you're in year 2, you still are in year 2 when we go back to it next year.
Okay, thanks.
And educator effectiveness, just in case people are wondering, it's a 3-year cycle. So it's year 1 where you get, unless you're a brand new teacher, then you're on it for 3 consecutive years. But once you're an experienced teacher, you get a summary evaluation from a principal once every 3 years. The other 2 years, you still have to do documentations, but it's a pretty cumbersome activity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moser about the committee meeting schedule. And you have to unmute yourself, Dr. Moser. Elliot, you need to unmute. There you go.
All right, good. Yeah, thank you. Starting next week, we will be starting the committee meeting system for our school board. I'm pleased that that is taking place. This will give the staff, the faculty, parents, the community a greater access to board members, to the decision-making process. And I think the community and the staff will appreciate this, as I think the school board will appreciate this process. Next week, Wednesday, will be the first meetings. The school board personnel committee and the school board policy committee are meeting on the 28th. And it will be the first kick at the committee process. The chair of the policy committee is Ms. Seam, and we've already put together a very good agenda for that meeting. The personnel committee will be meeting, that meeting is at 5 o'clock. The personnel committee will be meeting at 6 o'clock. And the next round after that will be on November 2nd, where we have the communications committee will be meeting, as will the curriculum committee. They'll be back to back. We're going to try to back meetings as much as possible. So these are going to be open meetings to the public. That doesn't mean that there will not be times when the committees will go into executive session, but they'll be virtual. But they will be open to the staff, the faculty, and to the public, and transparency and participation will be encouraged in all these important discussions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Moser. And then I wanted to end the information discussion items with a foundation update. I've been in the district since 2003, and I've always been impressed with the Glendale-River Hills School Foundation. I went back and added it up. They've donated over $800,000 to the School District of Glendale-River Hills over that time. Both Elliot and I were able to participate in their first meeting of the year, which was last Tuesday. And they made two decisions at that meeting. Number one is that they are using most of their funds right now, and they are going to be coming before the board, I think in November, if not December, depending on when they actually have the full access to the funds, to donate, to complete their promise to donate $50,000 to the building of the Innovation Learning Lab at Glen Hills. They have the money and they're coming to the board and to the district to donate that. If not next month, it will be in December. I am so thrilled with that. The Innovation Learning Lab is about 80% complete. The walls are up, everything is up and running. The rest of this money we will be using to buy the furniture, to finish up the furniture and get it all ready when students do return. So I think that is outstanding, and it's a kudos to Carla Pennington Cross, who's the new president of the district foundation, and the entire foundation board. I was thrilled to be part of that meeting. And then the second thing that they did is they chose to change their bylaws, that they've been on a percentage-based earmarking of funds, and they wanted, because of the pandemic, they wanted to have better access to where they can put the funds. So they have vacated the percentage-based earmarking of funds that go into effect. That earmarking went into effect back in January of 2018. They put that on hold. It will give them more flexibility in figuring out how the best way to use funds going forward. So again, I just want to give a shout out to Carla and the entire foundation board and previous boards and previous members of the foundation. Another $50,000 donation coming to this school district is outstanding. And I see Carla would like to actually say something if we can unmute her.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
It's good to see all of you. I'm sorry I've been out of pocket for the last couple months. I've had some big family business to deal with, but I'm back. And actually, Larry, I wanted to, if you all don't mind, I wanted to say it was actually our second foundation meeting of the school year. We've decided to meet monthly this year because of our district's unique needs and our community needs. I just wanted to add to what Larry said by saying that our trustees by consensus agreed that this year we need a lot of flexibility to support families. Our main goal this year, after we give you your $50,000 to our district, is to fundraise specifically and flexibly through our grant program to meet district community needs, whether that is a food need or a daycare need or a housing need or whatever our wonderful SEL and administrative and teaching staff in the district deem is appropriate as time passes. So I'm just thrilled to have a group of trustees who are committed to this, what I'm starting to think of as a living together and giving together model. We would love to have a school board member attend each of our second Tuesday of the month meetings. So if one of you can come, that would be wonderful. I know these are crazy busy times, no judgment here, but if one of you can come, we would love it. And I want to say, I think Larry's role in what the foundation does is terribly overlooked. He's been the stalwart de facto leader as the foundation has come and gone with volunteer leadership. And he's a yes man, whatever family members come up with saying, let's do this, let's do that. Larry says yes, and he finds ways to enable us. So Larry, so much gratitude to you for enabling us in trying to bring our generosity to bear in our school district. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
And someone from the board, please show up at our next meeting.
What is your next meeting?
Second Tuesday of the month. So what are we in? Second Tuesday of November. I think it's November 8th. Let me look at my calendar. Usually, Andy, I think I send you the link. It's
Yep.
November 10th, right?
Okay, November 10th.
So if you can't make it, maybe
I
hustle up
delegate.
someone else.
Absolutely. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you very much for the reminder.
All right, with that, Mr. Franklin, my discussion and updating items are over, and I turn it over to you for visitor participation.
Yeah, and now, if you're looking closely, visitor participation doesn't appear on the current version of the agenda, but that's okay because there were some technical issues. We fully intend to give everyone an opportunity to participate. So, visitor participation, if you have a comment, I would ask that you raise your hand and limit your comment to a total of 3 minutes. And I'll give everyone a moment if they have something that they would like to ask. And I don't know, Ms. Seligman, if that hand raising was on your image that just popped up was a request to raise your hand, but I see someone raising their hand behind a rainbow. So if it was, raise your hand within the chat. Oh, there you are. You're on video now. Okay. I guess we can start with you. That's great.
May I speak? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't raise my hand using the technical thing because my raise hand option has vanished. I have a question for the superintendent about the joint letter that came out from you and the other area superintendents earlier, maybe last week. I wonder if you would be willing to contextualize at all the decision-making process for that letter and the contents that were in it.
Sure, and I can, this was kind of a dual one because we really put this together just last week, and that's why I came out. And as a district, I chose to have Elliot's name on it because he's going to be the superintendent going forward shortly. But basically, it was a joint decision between the superintendents, kind of what Danielle was talking about earlier, that we meet every Tuesday and Thursday. In those meetings include the Health Department of Ozaukee, Washington counties and the North Shore Health Department. And we could just tell from the beginning of this year that the spike in COVID isn't just in Glendale. It's everywhere in the North Shore, including Ozaukee County. And we just thought if we could do a joint and have 13 different superintendents in this southeastern Wisconsin sign a joint letter that went to all families in all of those districts, it would hopefully reawaken some people to take the protocols needed. Because right now the spike is really going to cause, we are already virtual, and it's going to cause a lot of other districts to go virtual, and a lot of those communities do not want their schools to go virtual, but if they aren't going to follow the protocols, then they need an awakening, so to speak, and that's what this letter was we were hoping to do.
Thank you, I appreciate that context.
Okay, is there anyone else? In the interim, I might as well just ask, and I'll take off my hat as board president for just a second to ask the question. We have conferences coming up, and we didn't really touch base on conferences on the agenda. So what's our participation ratio with students and parents signing up for conferences?
For this first conference, our goal is 100% participation. Conferences happened last night. They are happening tomorrow night and then Friday. Any families that aren't able to do one of those 3 days, the expectation is that teachers will be reaching out to the families that they miss to make sure that a conference is held this fall.
Okay.
Would you, I'm Andy, this is Shannon again. Did you want us to collect the data around participation for a future board meeting?
Around visitor participation?
No, around the participation and parent-teacher
Oh,
conferences.
yes. No, I would like to know what that is, and because I also know that, there's a little bit of a change in the process and how the appointments are being staggered, and I am curious how that's working out in terms of people, and we haven't done it yet, so I don't know how it's going to work out with other people in the same time frame. So I just want to make sure that everyone's engaged, that everyone has, good feeling about how the conferences take place. And yeah, I mean, having a wrap up, at our next meeting, I think would be a great thing.
Great.
So yeah, just for an information, if you are a K4 through 5th grade student, you are having an individual meeting with your teacher. If you want to meet with an allied arts teacher, you can request that, and that would be set up for you. For 6th through 8, you will be meeting with the entire team, which is different. And that's because it's a virtual meeting instead of an in-person meeting. Again, with the expectation that if you specifically, I'll use you as an example since you brought it up as a parent, if you want a conference with Mr. McCarthy, who's the band director, you would have to set that up individually outside of your 7th grade team meeting that you will be having. So.
Yeah, And, I guess the other part of that question is I know that, for example, in 7th grade, there've been a lot of slots that were filled up. I just want to make sure that we aren't having a lot of people come back and say, gee, I couldn't find a slot that worked for me. Obviously the fallback is reaching out to the teacher directly, but I just want to make sure that, we have enough slots set up for everyone who wants to have it.
There are supposed to be enough slots, but if they're taken, or if one doesn't fit you, or if you choose not to take it, and if you want to do this as a experiment, choose not to sign up for anything and see if one of the teachers calls you, because the expectation that if you don't show up, you will get a phone call from your homeroom teacher to set up that meeting.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think the reason why I asked is all the 7th grade slots are booked. And so, I think that's pretty rare, which maybe means that it was sized perfectly and it everything was filled to capacity as expected, and, it's the right ratio. I guess that's the first time that I think we've seen that every single slot had been booked, which is good. Don't get me wrong. It means there's participation. I'd love to hear, these are uncharted waters, right? And we're doing this in a new way. So I'd just love to get that feedback and make sure that, we know that everyone, had that connection to their teacher in conference.
Yep.
Great.
We can bring that to the next meeting.
Perfect.
Kind of as we can be part of this staff survey also, so.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any other hands, and I tried to fill up as much dead air as I could here. So I'm going to entertain a motion at this time to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. No, second.
All right. Then just the three of us, because Teresa had to log off. So Molly Krachowiak,
Aye.
Danielle Bailey,
Aye.
and Andrew Franklin votes aye. So the motion carries. Tamika's not here to engage in the discussion. So we missed that. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful rest of October.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.